All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Legal Tech Week, our weekly roundtable of legal tech journalists in which we discuss and dissect the top stories in legal tech and innovation from the past week. This is Bob. I am Bob Ambrogi. I am the author of the blog LawSites and host of the podcast LawNext. And our panelists this week, as you see before you, are, I'll go from my left to right here. Victoria, you want to start?
Hey everyone, this is Victoria Hudgins. I'm a reporter with Legaltech News, which is a publication owned by ALM. I cover the law and technology, cybersecurity, both domestic and international.
And Molly?
Molly McDonough. I'm a legal affairs journalist and a media strategist based in the Chicago area.
All right, Nikki.
I am Nicole Black. I am the legal technology evangelist with MyCase law practice management software. I write about legal tech for a number of different outlets, including ABA Journal, Above the Law, Daily Record, and the MyCase blog, among others.
Zach.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Zach Warren. I'm editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News. Nice to be back this week, though last week this time I was on a hammock and a lake in northern Minnesota, so I do wish I was still there as much as I love you all.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And Victor, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am assistant managing editor with the ABA Journal. I handle the business of law section, which also intersects with technology. And like I said, usually say I do not speak for the ABA or the ABA Journal. And if anyone has a problem with anything I say, I don't speak for myself either.
All right. So with due deference to the fact that Nicole Black works in MyCase and not Clio, I think I want to, sort of one of the probably most notable events of the past week has been the Clio Cloud Conference, and I know a number of us on this call have been there at least for part of it. We've talked a number of times on this show about the challenges of staging a virtual conference and some of the highlights and lowlights that we've seen so far in some of the virtual conferences. As we were all just saying a moment ago, this one had a couple of technical glitches, but I thought overall, they did a pretty good job with it. And I thought that what was interesting to me was that there was an element to it that actually felt like it recaptured a little bit of the live conference. I thought, actually, I'm going to read somebody's tweet that I don't even know this person, but I saw somebody tweet this out earlier today where they said, kudos on combining practical information and innovation with a deep, profoundly provocative human side as well. And I think that kind of well captures what happened this week, especially with some of the speakers that they had. But wonder what you guys all thought.
I mean, I did think that it lost quite a bit by not, by being in the virtual format. I mean, I think I've gone to, 4 or 5 Clio conferences, and like I said before, it was like the social aspect was always a big deal, a big selling point, a big feature of the Clio Cloud conferences, and there was still some interactions, some ways to interact with people and whatnot, but it still felt different, I guess. But that being said, I was quite impressed with the diversity of speakers that they had, not just focusing on your typical Clio stuff or your typical innovation stuff, your typical that. They had just Ben Crump speaking. I mean, and they've done this before. Like I think they had Brian Stevenson a couple years ago. So I mean, they have and I think they've had other speakers like not in the civil rights or criminal justice areas, but people from all different types of not even some not even the law. I think one year they had someone talking about wellness, some one year talking about how to deal with stress and stuff. So I always appreciated that mix of views and and just the diversity of topics. So content wise, I definitely thought that it was one of the stronger conferences, but I did kind of feel like it was a little bit. I mean, it just felt different because of the fact that it was virtual. But I don't think there's anything they really could have done about that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely, I agree with Victor on there are parts of in-person you can't do. I think this is for sure the best virtual conference I've attended this year. I do think they still brought the energy and the production value despite some of the glitches. One of the things that I had a conversation on Twitter with Sarah Glassmeyer about is that the chat was super active and the Q&A was super active. And what I liked about both is that on the moderated Q&A, a lot of lawyers would answer, because you could thread your answers in the moderated Q&A, people would really offer helpful answers to questions from the lawyers. And then those questions then would be asked to the speakers during the second phase of their presentations. So I thought that was really interesting. And I thought for the most part, except for once when there was somebody who was just really upset that Ben Crump was speaking, other than that, the conversations were really positive and lively and lots of good back and forth and just kind of fun to see things you don't see at a conference, which is hellos and what's the weather like all around the world, including, I don't know if this is true, but I didn't have a chance to look it up, but it's snowing in Minnesota. So.
Yep.
Well, we have somebody here who can attest to that.
Yes, it did snow this morning. I was in the middle of a call. I looked outside and it was coming down hard and got very confused. So that's fun. But one thing kind of to your point, Molly, that I wanted to say though, is I feel like we talk a lot about the negatives of virtual conferences and not being able to meet in person. And obviously you're losing a lot, but I do find it interesting some of the positives that come with it too, of having that conversation kind of while somebody else is speaking. So you're able to respond and ask questions and get answers to your questions right away. I know I've been to a lot of live conferences that have tried to use Slido or raise your hand if you've had this problem and take a poll of the room, but even that feels a little bit impersonal. But being able to have that direct feedback and direct response to your questions, like you're able to have in a chat format, I think is really cool and something that I'd like to see a lot more people that are doing these virtual conferences take advantage of.
Yep. Victoria, what do you think? I know you didn't see as much of it probably, but you were there for parts of it.
Yeah, I definitely thought there were some like interesting discussions going on. It did Clio Conference back in 2018 was the first legal tech conference that I ever went to. And it was definitely, I think like if that had to be the first one that you're introduced to, that's the one because it's so interactive. It's a difference between like Legal Week, where it's more geared towards big law. And I think Clio tries to go for a more personal interactions with that type of conference. And even like an ABA, the ABA's conference, that even feels a little bit different. But Clio, they definitely try to have like a personable, I guess the word you could say vibe to it. And I think they tried to bring that into a virtual setting with like the roots. And I think they had like an Iron Chef, like cooking and like you could do gym workout session with them as well. But you kind of missed that, but they still kept kind of like the content of like, you can learn about Clio and you can also learn about how improving your law firm, either through Clio products or just being more data driven. Or I wrote about the Brian Parker session where he talked about data, fostering more diversity in law firms and kind of just like the tools that you can use to kind of to solve this challenge that the legal industry has been struggling with for decades. So I think they definitely have the content there. It's just kind of like, it's still something kind of missing when you've actually been to the real thing. But I saw that they were trying, and I do think it's kind of like something these conferences should take into mind of saying like, let's make this a little bit different and not just try to like have a bunch of Zoom panels.
Yeah, I mean, I in some ways I felt, maybe this is a little bit too, well, not exactly to the point Zach was making about the conversations, but in some ways having the keynotes right there on your screen made them almost feel a little more intimate than they might feel than when you're seeing them up on a big screen. I mean, the Ben Crump talk, both the Ben Crump talk and Seth Godin today, I felt, almost felt like you were sitting in a room with them, just listening to them talk anyway, and then during the Q&A having a conversation with them. So that was pretty good. I mean, that could be true of, of any, that's nothing unique to the Clio conference, but part of it was a testament to the quality of the speakers, I think.
Well, I mean, there's just like I was saying a little earlier, there's no beating having a personal concert either by Ben Harper in your home with a great backdrop they had. I mean, I think they brought the cool factor. And then I just want to point out something that Mark Palmer pointed to in the comments to us, that they also had closed captioning. And I saw a lot of appreciation for that in the comments too. And I thought that was really good, high quality. And they adjusted because when Bill Henderson was speaking, he had really detailed slides, and the closed captions were on top of the slides. And so they moved. There was a real-time feedback in the comments and in the chat, and they moved the closed captioning off to the side so you could see Bill's slides. So and they also were able to then respond about what things they could collect and make available on the website afterwards, because everybody wanted Bill's slides, and a bunch of people wanted Brian Parker's slides too.
So not to dwell too much on the Clio Cloud Conference, but Molly, speaking of Bill's presentation on the Main Street Lawyer, I know that was something that you had indicated you wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about as part of this program. I mean, I'm really sorry I missed that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I thought, I thought it was interesting. I've heard Bill speak, and I've been involved with the Paradigm Shift series he did at the ABA Journal for many years, and he was in our first class of legal rebels. So I feel like I've been pretty familiar with Bill's work. This is the first time I've seen him really focus on Main Street lawyers, so the solo small firm lawyers that work with people, as he said, work with people and provide a service rather than work for corporations or on behalf of corporations. So it was a really interesting, and he's done that to an extent with some of his labor data with what lawyers earn and things like that. But he really focused in on the value, what's happened to the legal profession for the small firm lawyer. The influence of advertising and storefront practices with Jacoby and Myers and Hyatt Legal that developed and then basically went away during the recession, and or folded into other companies. But I thought it was really instructive. It was a little frightening, I think, for some of the people listening, because it seemed to be like, oh, the world is changing. You're not going to be able to do anything you think successful in the way you think you're going to be successful. And so that was a little jarring. But what he was really saying is that you can have a successful practice, and you should be able to serve so many more people, but you're going to have to bring in other talents into your practice ecosystem. You can't be the expert in everything, and you're going to need to bring in a team of people who can help you better serve your clients at scale. And one of the points he made is that the dynamic of lawyering has shifted from one-to-one to one-to-many, and that shift has happened in consumer culture, but it hasn't really happened yet effectively in legal, because we still don't have the skill set or the billing options that would make that one-to-many most effective.
Interesting. Was anybody else on that session or had any thoughts on what Molly just said? Or Victor, last thing before we move off Clio Cloud, Victoria, you also sat in on a couple sessions, and what did you see that interested you there?
Oh, I also I covered the Future of Virtual Courts panel discussion, and it featured a Michigan Supreme Court Chief Justice and a representative from Canada's first online court tribunal. I forget the exact title. And also a lawyer, Greenberg and Cherrick, shareholder lawyer. And they were talking about the future of virtual courts and will it continue after COVID-19 subsides? And they said definitely, maybe not at the full level that we see now, but kind of like the efficiencies and benefits that it provides to like access to justice, that you'll see, you'll still continue to see like online court proceedings. And I thought it was interesting that the woman from the Canada Online Tribune,
Shannon Salter.
Sharon Shelter, yes. She mentioned that online shouldn't be the only alternative for court proceedings. You should also provide telephone, even in person, I think she said telephone and online proceedings, so everyone's able to participate and kind of like take away that stigma, especially if you don't have a lawyer with you, to actually be able to proceed in court legal proceedings, and kind of like why that will continue in the Michigan State Supreme Court Justice. She even mentioned that she did hear some people complaining about like, hey, I don't like this, let's go back to how things were. But she said it's kind of like they should get, that judges aren't going to stop their acceleration of technology. They're going to continue it. And that's kind of interesting. I've heard other courts, even with state budget cuts, they're saying that they're not really looking to take away from their technology, especially if they have less support staff. They're looking to actually automate more so they can get more, they can continue to get work done with less people. So I think it'll be something interesting to watch. And of course, some lawyers are against it, but I think it will be like after 2020, courts won't necessarily look the same like they were in early 2020.
Yeah, I only caught a couple minutes of their talk and I had to switch to something else. But the part I caught was she was talking about the idea that it's, you know, it's nice to make courts virtual, but that you don't just stop there. You can't just put a court on Zoom and, you know, think that you've come up with an answer. You have to be thinking about the user-centric design and doing it in a way that's friendly and intuitive to the people who are going to be using that, which is something that I don't think a lot of courts have really thought about. So.
Well, and the other thing that just really resonated with me, and I've heard Nicole Black talk about this a lot too, but she really hit home the point for me that what happens with a lot of technology development and service-oriented development is that designers and lawyers and technologists come in, they have identified a problem or a service that needs to be delivered in a new way, and they create this product and they get it to this beta version, and then they bring in the public. And her point is, you have to start with the public helping identify the problem in the service and developing that technology and delivery all along the way. And that's the only way it'll be truly accessible, is if you start to bring in those stakeholders. And I had the opportunity to work with Pro Bono Net earlier this year, and it's really interesting to see how some of the legal services organizations do that work, bring in the stakeholders so early on into the process and make them help them, they're part of the solution. They're the population that's being served, so they should be part of identifying and developing the solutions.
I don't know. I hate to be the skeptic, but I just feel like it would just be the easiest thing in the world for everyone. Like once this crisis passes, everyone just be like, all right, let's go back and do things the way we used to. You know, it's so much of the litigation system. It's been ingrained in so many lawyers and whatnot, just that you have to show up, you have to be there. You know, you personally serve people, or you being confronted in a courtroom with your accusers and with the witnesses. It just, there's so much premium is put on that. Like, I just feel like just then turning on a dime and being like, okay, well, now we're going to do teleconferences, now we're going to do video conferences, now we're going to do all that other stuff. I don't know. I feel like it would just be very, very easy for people to just fall back into comfortable habits, and maybe, maybe it won't happen. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see if there really is like a huge, if once we get more data and we get more reporting and more information about how much more accessible technology makes the court, the justice system, how much money we save, how many more people we can serve, and what kind of stuff. Then maybe I could see that. But otherwise, I just feel like it would just be easy, just press the reset button and just go back to how things were.
I definitely get that, but one thing that does give me a little bit of heart, and with the caveat that if you're speaking at a tech conference, it's probably a self-selecting sample, but a lot of the people who are coming out in favor of this are the jurists themselves. We see a lot of judges, not only from Michigan, but obviously Utah and other places, that are saying, yeah, we see in our courtrooms how many people are coming in without lawyers, how tough it is to have access to justice. We don't know how exactly things are going to change, but we recognize that there needs to be some sort of change here. And as we saw in Utah, as long as you have a few judge champions, it can go a lot further than maybe necessarily just one individual lawyer who's trying to affect change themselves.
So,
I actually,
well, I was just going to add to that fact that the other part of that is that, so I would say that the observation in Michigan is that rather than a few judge champions, now there's just a few holdouts. So I think that switch has been flipped. And then also it's worth noting that in Michigan, one of the reasons they were able to adapt so quickly is because they already saw this as a way forward. So they already had Zoom licenses for their entire judiciary because it's a giant state and their court system needed to be able to serve parts of the state that are really hard to get to. And so they were, already doing this dispute resolution, dispute resolution portals and online courts as part of their plans before the pandemic. So I think that now that it's, they had to test that much more quickly than they thought they would have to, but now that they've done it, I don't see them going back.
well, just from the access to justice angle, I read an article this morning. I don't know where I saw it. It was a legal publication about access to justice and online court systems. And what interested me was what they said was that this theory that online court attendance and conducting court online will forward access to justice may be flawed, because actually, just as we're seeing with online schooling, the people that truly are it's the lowest socioeconomic people at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder that are getting left behind because they don't have the technology they don't have the laptops, they don't have the phones that are up to date so that they can, so that you can have Zoom conferences on the phones, or they don't own laptops. And so I think that's a little bit of a wrinkle in this access to justice theory in terms of online courts, at least.
Yeah, that's a major issue, and Victoria was in that session with Shannon Salter, and that's the main reason she was talking about you can't just have it all online. You have to have a mix of online, in-person, telephone, by mail, and then you have to be able to make that accessible. And accessible means also communicating that it's available in people's language, in plain language. I mean, there are lots of layers to this. But yeah, I agree. I mean, the technology gap is huge for anyone who's justice involved.
So Nikki, you've been at a disadvantage not having been at any of the Clio conference this week. But I know a number of stories interested you this week. What's at the top of your list this week? Well,
a good segue is, speaking of Michigan. The one that interested me the most was an article that I wrote for the Daily Record about an ethics opinion I'd missed initially. I believe it was from February, although I could be confusing it with another, but it was from earlier this year, where Michigan adopted the duty of technology competence. That was not necessarily what stood out to me. What stood out to me was that it adopted the ABA's secure communication concepts from opinion 477. I had thought that the the Pennsylvania bar was the first one to do so when they issued an opinion right after the pandemic hit in April. Right. They'd issued an opinion on the ethics of remote working and how to work remotely, securely, and ethically. And they adopted opinion 477. And just for a point of reference for those listening, if you're not familiar, what ABA's opinion 477 essentially said, and this came out 2 years ago, was that email is no longer necessarily a secure way to communicate about confidential client information. And they created a test in terms of determining how should you communicate with your clients. They suggested on a case-by-case basis, you need to assess the sensitivity of the information you're going to be sharing. And if it is particularly sensitive, you need to find an encrypted method of communication for that, which would be encrypted email or secure client portal built into law practice management software or something like that. And I always advise when I write about it, rather than go through this whole song and dance on a case-by-case basis, find an encrypted way to communicate from here on out, because I believed that other jurisdictions were going to start adopting this rule because the ABA's ethics opinions are advisory. And I thought that Pennsylvania was the first one to do it when I read that in April, and I was super stoked about it. But then lo and behold, I discovered this Michigan opinion that I'd missed writing about. I try to write about all the tech competence opinions as they come down. And I wrote about that one. And as I was reading it and writing about it, I stumbled upon the fact that they had also adopted that. So I was super excited about that, because I think that especially now that we're all working remotely, and that's probably going to be going on and off in different jurisdictions as there's surges, that lawyers need to understand that email is not inherently secure. It's actually not secure. It's like a postcard written in pencil going through the post office, and that they need to make sure that they're using some sort of secure communication, especially now because there's so much remote working, this number of cyber attacks seems to be increasing. I just had a bunch of notifications from a couple of different software programs I run that all sorts of my passwords have, a bunch of accounts, a lot of them shopping or whatever, have been hacked or have been breached, that there is a breach and I have to change passwords. And they run the gamut, but there's about 15 of them that over the last 3 or 4 days were exposed in different hacks, different breaches. So, and there have been articles out there that talk about how these breaches are happening with increasing frequency. And so as a result, I think lawyers do need to be cautious and find some encrypted way to communicate, especially now that more jurisdictions are adopting that. And Michigan, was the most recent one, and I was excited about it. So I think that was really the most noteworthy thing that I have come across. The other things were interesting, like judges communicating on social media about hitting on people on social media in their robes. Another one was a judge inadvertently sending all the bar results to everyone.
Dean, the law school dean, yeah.
Yeah, Dean. Oh, sorry, Dean. To all
the former ABA
students.
president.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of email and social media flubs, which caught my eye. But in terms of something that was noteworthy, I really thought the Michigan opinion, since it was the second one, even though it predated the Pennsylvania one. So that's what, what caught my eye.
I follow that closely too, and I did not know about the Michigan opinion either. And now you really messed me up, because I just submitted a presentation for another virtual conference in which I said, here are all the opinions on duty of tech comp, and I didn't have that one in there. So
here, I'll post it. Initially, it was behind a paywall, but my daily record articles are syndicated nationally and then picked up by other gatehouse media publications, and one of them picked it up. So I'll post that in a minute once I locate it into the chat.
But it is really that ABA opinion is really interesting, and both the Pennsylvania and Michigan and other opinions that have talked about this, at least broadly in terms of the lawyer's duty to protect, email and other electronic communications with clients. It continues to be the fact from my experience that most lawyers are not doing that. And they are not using any kind of encryption. They don't even know how to use encryption. I often go to usually when I speak at a group, I'll usually ask the room, how many people in this room know how to encrypt an email? And if you see a few hands go up, it's a good day. So this is a really serious problem, and hopefully these ethics opinions will at least spur lawyers to be a little bit more thoughtful about this.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting. Well, do you think that, I think this is a major issue, especially for small and mid-sized firms. I would be surprised if any large firms don't have encryption requirements and protocols. But it has to be a massive issue for small firms that are, penny pinching and trying to figure out, what the best technology is, and completely confused by the market and the choices.
I mean, that's true. That's probably true. But then again, the large firms have all sorts of their own tech competence issues all the time. The number of cases involving large firms flubbing redactions of documents filed in federal court are becoming too many to count. We saw, Cypher. It's just what was it this week when they got the victim of a ransomware attack. I mean, those are tough. I'm not sure that's necessarily a lawyer tech competence issue, but it's certainly a tech training and preparedness issue.
Yeah, that's why I think one thing that may be important moving forward for a lot of people to think about is not even, or just making it as easy as humanly possible, just not giving other options. It's not the same as email, but related. I was talking with somebody about virtual desktops and trying to keep them behind a firewall, making sure everything is safe. And he made the point, yeah, just make it look like a regular desktop, and that's what you log into automatically. If you don't give any other options, then it's very easy to make sure everything is encrypted. So I feel like for a lot of law firms, that may be the answer. Is, I think somebody put Proton Mail in the chat there. Make that your only email source. And if you do that, then it would make life a lot easier.
Well, and I wrote an article in June for the ABA Journal. I've been trying to, as the pandemic hit, focus my articles on tools lawyers can use that'll help them during the pandemic. And so I wrote one on secure communication tools for lawyers that talked about the ABA 477 opinion and then the different options that are out there. But I agree with you, Zach, that I think lawyers need to choose some sort of secure option that's a good fit for their firm's needs. And, my personal opinion, and I'm biased, I'll admit it, but I think that the client portals that are built into the practice management software programs are oftentimes the simplest and easiest way to securely communicate. You have all your information in one place in that software program, and you let your clients know at the very start, no matter what type of secure communication tool you're using. I recommend that they just notify them at the time of engagement and say, this is how we're going to communicate because we want to make sure that we're going to protect your information. Yes, it's another login, but you know how to do, you do this with your doctor, you do this with your bank, and you need to do it with your lawyer because this is some of the most secure and important confidential information and needs to be protected. So as long as you let them know up front, whatever the method's going to be, client portal, what you just mentioned, or some sort of encrypted email, you let them know up front, they create their login once, and then they just know that's how they communicate with you. And once you do that, I think clients get over that bump. Some lawyers object to it because they think the clients don't like it, but I think it's super important, and lawyers this needs to really be forefront for a lot of lawyers in terms of working remotely right now.
Yep. Zach, what did you have this week?
Yeah, my one for this week was yesterday. E-discovery company Disco announced that they had raised $60 million. That is on top of the $80+ million that they had announced in early 2019. So more than 140 million in the past 18 months or so. We've talked a lot about the growth of another wave of e-discovery companies, particularly those that are cloud-centric, Disco being one of the main people in that. But what really stood out to me when I talked to them this week was just how much of that 60 million they're going to be pouring into sales. They said that they're going to be doubling their sales staff in North America, growing in Asia for the first time, growing in Europe, the internationalization of this all. But B, how they also plan on growing their partner channels, which sounds very Relativity-esque to me. There are a lot of very large e-discovery companies that do a lot of the services arm, like your Concilio, like your Epic, but haven't been that many at scale that have been very software oriented like Relativity is. But that is exactly what Disco is doing, and looking to resell through partner channels in a similar way and build up that ecosystem. So especially with this increased funding, it seems like they're going for the throat a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It's because especially they're cloud native, whether they are able to take on everything that Relativity is doing with Relativity One.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. They, in their press release announcing this, they alluded to the idea that they want to become the Salesforce of legal. And I was looking back on my blog for how many times people have said to me they want to become the Salesforce of legal, and I'm realizing if I charge like $10 every time somebody said that, I could be rich by now. But I mean, it is interesting, and relativity does remain the big player on the block, and but I do feel that I do wonder to what extent, in particular, the pandemic has maybe shifted that whole equation a little bit, because relativity one, some people haven't been entirely happy with it, and which is their cloud version, and some of it may be opening a door for some of these other companies. And
yeah,
I know,
when I talked with him, that's basically what I talked to the COO of Disco, and that's what he said is they very publicly had some layoffs in the early pandemic, and there was a downswing. But then as soon as that initial wave was over, they saw a lot of people saying, oh, we recognize that the cloud is pretty much a thing that we have to go to now. And that upswing that happened pretty rapidly for them. So that's why right now, even so soon after their last funding round, they felt that they pretty much had to be aggressive to try and take advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking yesterday to somebody from Case Point who was saying basically the same thing. I mean, the year has been good for them in terms of business, as bad as it's been in other ways, but definitely driving people to more cloud-based software all across the board.
Well, Zach, you'd mentioned in your email that, sorry, Molly.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, so Zach, I think you mentioned in your email, and I saw that in the article just now. Like, this comes right after they cut a bunch of people, or they laid off people. I mean, not being one to opine on someone's business practices or business model, and maybe there's a legitimate reason for that. I mean, did you get, and do you have any insight into that? Like, I mean, one's not necessarily related to the other, obviously, but it is a bad look for a company to do that.
It is. It certainly is. And I know they weren't the only e-discovery company to be cutting people at that time. And I've heard off the record that it's still not over for some e-discovery companies that are having cuts right now. They didn't really go into that much, understandably, when I talked to them. I did ask, and that's basically the answer they gave me is by the end of the first half of the year, their revenues were close to on target because of that upswing. So that's why they felt they had to be aggressive. But as to obviously what that means for the people that were cut, I don't have many answers there.
Victor, what about you? What got your attention this week?
Oh yeah, like I saw that China is starting a digital yuan trial by giving I guess the equivalent of $30 in American dollars to 50,000 people in the country, and it's just their way of trying to, well, the official party line is just their way of trying to experiment with this digital currency, because they want to be the tech leaders going forward on so many things, and you've seen it with some of the DNA tracking that they've done and some of the contact tracing and some other things, and the social scores and things like that. But of course, the skeptical way of looking at it is another way to like just track what people are doing and to see how they're spending their money and to be able to trace things and whatnot. But I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, just I haven't been following it too closely, but I mean, just kind of looking at some of the things that China has been doing over the last like year or two, it does seem as if they're definitely kind of trying to establish themselves as like the tech leaders going forward. And sort of the flip side of that is that it's easier to kind of watch what everybody's doing when you have so much technology being centralized within the government and having them control everything. So yeah, I think it's just this just seems to be at the latest trend in that. But I mean, but if the trial goes well and the currency does prove to be stable and it is like a way to kind of give them an advantage over other countries, it'd be interesting to see how that works going forward, especially seeing how the relation between the United States and China with the dollar depreciations and whatnot. It'll be interesting to see how that happens.
Wait and see if it drives up the price of my Bitcoin.
And Facebook's cryptocurrency Libra, it's still going. I saw like an announcement was from like EU regulator saying like, okay, I think it was something like we need to add rules for this type of cryptocurrency. So Libra, Facebook Libra is still going through the ringer. So it'll be, and I think Mark Zuckerberg even mentioned like China is building cryptocurrency and like the United States can't be behind. So it kind of be interesting as like China, their cryptocurrency they start leveraging that more. Will that have any impact on like Facebook and Libra? Like US regulators and everyone else say they have an issue with it, but well, if China turns out like a cryptocurrency, could that impact like Libra at all? So that'll be interesting to watch too.
So that could be a transition to a story I did this week, which has to do with the intersection of I guess, blockchain and law, which is this Legaler aid that was announced this week. Legaler is this, it's an international company but based in Australia that provides, I mean, their core platform is this communications and calendaring platform for lawyers to meet with clients. But they've launched this project, Legaler Aid, that they've been talking about for a couple of years, which is essentially an attempt to crowdfund legal help for legal aid purposes and particularly social justice purposes. And the blockchain connection is that all of these contributions or donations, it's sort of like a GoFundMe or something. People can go in and fund, pick and choose social justice or legal aid projects and fund them. But all of the donations will be tracked through a blockchain ledger so as to ensure that the money is actually going to a legal case as opposed to buying your lawyer a Ferrari or something like that, as has happened with a couple of these crowdfunded justice matters in the past. It's later come out that the money that people put in didn't necessarily go to legal expenses at all. So it's an interesting idea, and they actually have this much bigger idea of kind of building out this whole legal aid platform that will facilitate delivering, connecting those in need of legal help with lawyers willing to provide legal help on a really global basis. And they've already got some pretty big partners in it, namely Lex Mundi's Pro Bono Foundation, which is an international network of law firms. And also the Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County, which is one of the largest legal services offices in California. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Any thoughts on that?
Definitely. I feel like the question with that has always been a matter of adoption, though. So yeah. I hadn't read that article of yours. I'm going to go check it out, though, because that is interesting. I know that there's been some more business-oriented cases where people have tried to do that on a grander scale, more outside of just legal. I know that there was one that was trying to essentially build water wells in Africa, then using blockchain as a secure method of donation and for collection as well. But the issue that they were having on the back end was in fact that collection and making sure that everything was going smoothly from the blockchain to people who actually needed it. So as long as you have those facilitators like those legal aid organizations, that would solve that problem quite well. It's just a matter of making sure everything is clean.
Yeah. That's one of those. It's one of those. Stay tuned and see what happens with it. But I think it's an interesting idea. The only other one I just wanted to mention real quick, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I had one of yours that that this week was so full of packed with news that I forgot to put it on my list, Bob, which was the Legaltech Hub.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to mention too. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I just think that's something that's missing in the marketplace is a good solid directory and vetting and way to research software and kind of all one technologies in all one place. So I thought that was a pretty interesting development.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting. This was started, if you didn't see the story, by husband and wife team. Nikki Shaver is the Director of Innovation and Knowledge at Paul Hastings. She is, fairly well recognized as an innovative force within the legal profession. She was one of the winners of ILTA's Distinguished Peer Awards this year. She was named Innovative Leader of the Year, and her firm was Innovator of the Year. So it's her and her husband, Chris Ford, who's currently the CMO at the legal tech company Xero. But they've created this, essentially just tried to come up with a single directory of all the commercial legal technology in the world. They're not doing A to J tech or direct to consumer tech, but so it's really focused on law firms and corporate legal departments and tech that serves them. But really be interesting to see how that develops and if they don't lose their sanity trying to keep it current, because that's going to be the hard part.
Well, and what interested me about it was it seems to be it does not seem to be pay to play, meaning they just seem to be trying to create a directory of legal products rather than only including the ones that pay them to be included. So I think that can be a valuable resource, because sometimes companies that purport to provide a directory don't always disclose that it is pay to play.
Right.
So it's not.
Yeah. It will be free to access and free to list, but there will be enhanced listings that companies can pay for, and they already have advertising on it. And she said they do plan to develop out some other kind of content that they're going to charge for access to. So they do want to make money at it. But
yeah, that may end up changing. It's not like the good old days of, the internet, the wild, wild west in '95, where people just randomly created websites that were directories of stuff just because they wanted to create it. Now everyone's always trying to monetize whatever they're doing, but I guess.
Well, even the Yellow Pages has enhanced advertising, so
right.
Yeah.
If anybody has a Yellow, I actually did get a Yellow Pages book the other day for my for a 3 municipality area. I couldn't believe it landed on my doorstep.
I haven't seen one of those.
Yeah, I got one last year. I was like, what do you want me to do with this? Like, I guess I could use it to prop open the door or something
It's right in the recycling bin, right?
I'm sorry, Bob. I didn't see that story, but so like
what's the matter with you guys? You're not reading my blog all this week?
No, but so the enhanced so the enhanced advertising is it just they would put it at they just put it at the very top? Is that what it is, or is it?
The enhanced listing will give them more the ability to put more into a listing. I don't think it's going to change. What's really nice about it actually is they've got a lot of granular filtering in terms of searching for different products. So it's not going to change how you appear in search results. It's just going to appear what you can include in your listing.
Yeah, I could see. I could see that giving people an advantage, but I guess that's that's the internet now, right? Google puts people at the very top. The Yellow Pages does it. So
yeah.
It's like claiming your profile on Avvo, except you have to pay for it.
Right. And they also plan to have user ratings at some point, which will be interesting because, of course, user ratings and advertising don't always mix well. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I did read this one, to be fair. And but my response was pretty much what you said at the end. Like, man, it'd be cool. Good luck keeping it current. There's so many, especially if the startup scene and how many new companies are coming into the space, like almost daily. I feel like it would be a full-time job, quite honestly, to update something like that.
That's what I was telling them, because I started my I supposedly have a directory of legal tech startups on my website, but I know that's out of date and incomplete because I just can't keep up with it. It's enough to try and keep up with the people who message me and say add me to your list, but then to try and there's all the others that aren't messaging me and that are just coming up every day, and it's really difficult to keep up with that. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been looking at my email lately, and it's it's like I feel like it's like every 30 seconds or something I'm getting a new email. It's just getting crazy, the quantity of stuff that's happening out there. So
actually, within the past 2 weeks specifically, I've noticed an uptick, and I don't know why. Been slammed, and it seems to be a lot of people are jumping in, maybe especially because the pandemic slowed down some plans, but all of those are just getting pushed back into a condensed time frame, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So maybe we should ask all the PR people out there in the audience to just like send us a weekly summary of their pitches. How's that? That would be good.
So, Bob, I just want to say, like, the comment you made about Salesforce reminded me of something Seth Godin said this morning during his keynote that kind of reframed, because I remember Jason Teche really being just turned off by any time somebody said they have the TurboTax of law for whatever it is. But I thought it was interesting that Seth Godin said that that's actually a really great way to connect with clients. So now I have to make it relatable to something that's already in the marketplace is incredibly effective for marketing.
Well, I edited that piece that Jason wrote, and I told him, I was like, yeah, you might hate it, but there's a reason why people do it, because it works.
No, and it does. It's descriptive. I mean, you understand right away what they're talking about when they say something like that, as opposed to trying to explain the concept from scratch. So, no, I understand why people do that. It's just funny that, I mean, even within the e-discovery space, there've been a number of companies over the last couple of years that have told me they want to be the Salesforce of litigation or whatever. And so enterprise, it's always, the word enterprise is always in there somewhere too.
There was one thing I just realized that I completely neglected mentioning that was super exciting. Victor sent me an email about avatars, like some sort of app that is added to Zoom where you can create an avatar, but the purpose that they're creating it for doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's basically, instead of your head floating here on the screen during Zoom, you can put your avatar there. I don't quite understand why you'd want to do that. For me, it's more this idea of a virtual conference, which is like a mini virtual world of sorts. You would want to navigate as an avatar rather than just put an avatar up instead of your head. But even so, it's like avatars are advancing into the virtual world, like the Zoom world. So it was exciting. And I neglected to mention that, but thank you for setting that to me. I'll put it into thanks for forwarding that, Victor. I'll put it into the chat in case there's anyone else, some lone person out there who's excited about avatars like me.
A lip syncing avatar, no less.